Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Effectory's webinar series. My name is Axel. I have the pleasure to be your host today, and we're going to talk about a topic that's super relevant and super interesting today, I think. It's also close to my heart, so I'm really happy that we're doing this. Today we're going to be talking about diversity, inclusion, and how that relates to high performance. I think we're all quite clear on why we're talking about this subject right now, but if you haven't looked at a newspaper in recent times, let me help refresh your memory. We've seen global protests, which started out against anti-Black police violence in the US, but they spread oceans to reach a lot of other countries as well, and they've become a much broader anti-racism movement. And it seems as if this time, representing companies, organizations, they can no longer stay behind. So it's no longer just about the police, but about systemic racism across countries, across cultures, that is really in the spotlight right now. Now, and if you're like us and you've been working on company culture for the last 20 years, you know that there cannot be a successful company culture without diversity and inclusion. But we also know that at this time, only about 20% of organizations actually has a diversity and inclusion policy active. And then, of course, it's the question, how many companies of that 20% actually mean something by it? And to what extent is it just something pretty to put up on our wall? So we're going to try and help you with that topic today because it is a very difficult one. It's also highly emotional. And with us today is Esther Mollema, who is the founder and the director of both the Direction and the High Performance Center. So she has a lot of experience in talking about diversity and inclusion, but also how that relates to high performance. Esther, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Alex. Great being here.
Axel, but that's all right.
Axel.
Thank you. So I can imagine that over the course of the last few weeks, your calls must have been off the hook. Organizations reaching out to you for your expertise.
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, what I see more than other times is that the Black Lives Matter movement started to touch, to reach Holland and Europe as well, and that it's a far more emotional debate than we ever have seen in Holland. And that people feel empowered to speak up more and tell each other stories about how they felt excluded, what they have actually been through, and it's far more emotional. And the empowerment to speak up and to demand action is actually what goes on in organizations a lot. And people are searching for answers, and probably people that are listening today as well, searching for answers. What is the right reaction? What should we be doing next? How do we use this energy to actually get moving on things that we wish to do more of? And so let's talk about that today.
Excellent. I'm really excited to hear your story, especially because we want this to stick, right? We don't want this to be just a temporary thing until it blows over. We really want this to get the importance and attention that it deserves. For the people listening at home, or maybe you're back at the office or wherever you are, as usual, please leave your questions. We'll field them today in the session. I'll ask Esther to respond to your questions. And I would also like to invite you that if you have a personal experience in light of these events and you've witnessed or participated in discussions in your own organization, and you'd like to share anonymously, of course, what your experience was like, I think that's going to be very powerful for the people that are listening and watching today. So please submit your questions, submit your experiences. And for now, Esther, please take it away and enlighten us, please.
Well, thank you so much. And let me talk to you about what I think we should do and what I know about this topic and why it's been so hard to get into actions and how you can change that, in one way or the other. And I think the most important thing is that that one way or the other, high performance is related to how the brain works, and also to how to move on inclusion and diversity is connected to how the brain works. And the more we know about how the brain works, the more we know that we have, we've done things in the past that we thought were the best possible ideas. But reality, were assumptions about how people move, what motivate people, how people feel about groups. And so we're starting to see that we need to build new strategies on how we look for talent, how we do selections, how we praise people, and you will see that in the course of the next few years, that will really change because we have new insights on how the brain works. And if you look at high performance, of course, we study that. I work together with Andre de Waal, who does a lot of studies on it, and you can see that high performance is also about understanding how your brain works and making sure what is it that motivates people, what is it what people need to excel. And if you compare it with two legs in an organization, if you compare it to if you have to two legs in an organization, if you need to walk, you need two legs. You need a manager's leg and you need a leadership leg, and you need a daring leg and a caring leg. And so it's all about short term and tactical, and long term and inspirational. And these two things need to walk up together. And everything that is these legs need to be connected to each other, and legs need to be stimulated by each other, and that is everything that has to do with dialogue. Is everyone engaged in the organization? Is everyone included? Does everyone feels heard and valued in the organization? And that's why the daring and the caring part come together. But the glue of that is dialogue, and dialogue is it's best when everyone can participate and where we all bring difference to the table. So one way or the other, we all are unique people, and we all bring difference to the table. And that is what diversity is all about, where you make the difference. And in high performance, we mostly concentrate on the lower part of what you call this iceberg. And you look at how do you have a different educational background? Do you have a different cultural background? Have you long experience in this part, shorter experience at a different organization or whatsoever? And the top of the iceberg is about color of your skin, gender, age, physical ability, and those things, it's interestingly enough, don't bring that much difference per se as a group, but all these individuals bring difference. So in the end, you always want to look for what does somebody bring new to a team, what does somebody can add to the team, and inclusion is all about can I be myself in this team? Do I feel valued? Do I feel heard? Can I really be involved in the team? Is it safe for me to say whatever I have to say, or will that hurt me in the end? And is it psychology safe? And for a long time, we thought that when diverse people would come into organizations, we told them this is how we work. You will be most successful if you fit our norm. And now we know, if we study the brain, that changing yourself to fit the norm costs you way too much energy. And you cannot use that energy to produce beautiful results for the organization, to do wonderful things. You use your energy, your brain energy, to just fit in. And therefore, in 2020, we say, we need to create organizations that are inclusive and can bring the best out of people. And in this time and age, some organizations seem to forget that diversity and inclusion is the link to innovation, is the link to resilience, is the link to reimagination, what you are going to do. And therefore, you need to keep an eye on this ball. It's not only the Black Lives Matters initiative, it's also the crisis that's coming up. Make sure your teams are diverse enough and inclusive so that they can actually tackle the challenges that are ahead. And the interesting thing about the brain is there's 1 billion of research out there. There's so much research out there that proves that diverse teams outperform more heterogeneous teams or homogeneous teams, because you are at your best, you and your people are at their best, when they're slightly uncomfortable. So when you're slightly challenged each and every day, and that, when you enter into a meeting where you don't know exactly what will be discussed and what the outcome of the discussions will be. That's when you are at your very best. So your best talents will want to surround themselves with diversity, because actually diversity challenges them more. But the odd thing is the brain doesn't like to be challenged all the time and that much. And therefore, you feel more comfortable in a homogeneous team. You think you are more effective, and you have more self-confidence in a high-performance team. So this is exactly why we haven't moved. We say we want it, we know we should want it. And on the other hand, it's easier to stay in, and we think we produce beautiful results if we don't do so, and your brain gives you all those signals. So here is one of the first challenges I hope you could look at.
So we're reading in newspapers, right, impending gloom and doom when it comes to the economic recession.
Yeah.
We also know from experience that it might actually be economic downturns may actually be a contributing factor to in-crowding. So focusing on people that look like you.
Yeah.
But if I understand you correctly, we should actually be explicitly doing the opposite. Is that right?
Yeah. You will come, if the group stays too homogeneous, you will come up with the same ideas for the same old problem over and over again, and you will not survive. If you, if we know that, more diverse teams look at all alternatives in more detail, and then we'll come up with different solutions.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please.
And so, in 2020, you hope that everybody knows this and that we are aiming for it. But, the Black Lives Matter movement shows and lots of other things show. This is a picture from the USA. I think it's a 2019 or 2018 picture. This is Mike Pence with all the people he invited as experts to talk about reproductive rights of women. On abortion rights of women. These are the people that decide on this in the US. And this it's much better in the Netherlands? Maybe not. If you look at this picture, these are coalition negotiations done, I think, in 2017. Every political party had a male and a female in their top ranks. But when it came to the negotiations, they all invited the same people, and there was only one woman at that table. No black person, no people with a different cultural background, I think, if I look at this group of people. And there's only Carole Schouten that was in. And we forgot to talk about diversity and inclusion. We forgot to talk about equal pay for all. And this is more recent. This is the beginning of the corona crisis. And this is the group that actually discusses the economic measures we should take to help organizations to survive. And this is the group that called each other out and said, we are the experts in the Netherlands to deal about this. But do people feel recognized by this group? Do people feel that they take everyone serious and they look very proudly into the camera? But is this the best way to represent the Netherlands? I don't think so. And this is the exact same, of course, in organizations. And the other thing you need to know about the brain that is very important is that, it's about unconscious bias and how fast that jumps. So there's something very specific about this in the Netherlands, about the Netherlands that you need to know. And maybe it also has to do with yourself. We know that you take most of your decisions unconsciously. And we know that only 5% of your decisions are actually thought of and really, really well thought out. And most of the other decisions, you jump to conclusions. And that makes us vulnerable to unconscious bias. And so we know that about 55% of what you actually, 55% of what you think or how you come to judgment about someone is through the eyes. You see it and you know. 38% is through the ears. You hear it and you know. Does somebody speak like we speak? Is somebody use the right accent? Is that the right way? And only 7% is that person very capable? So we jump to conclusions, and that's why we need special attention for the top of the iceberg. Because the top of the iceberg is not, they don't bring, these individuals don't bring diversity per se, but we leave them out as a group. You see a woman and you sit there and think, she cannot be the leader of this organization. You see a black person, you sit there, is that person well educated enough? Can we trust that person really? And so your brain does the work for you, and therefore we leave them out. In Holland today, if you are a black person and you have a wonderful resume, you have less chance if the person with the exact same resume but who's white, that also has a criminal record. The person with the white person with a criminal record has more chance to be invited for a job interview than the black person with the same beautiful resume without a criminal record. That is Holland today. And what we know about Holland is that we have tested all over the world, and Harvard does the same. And there's 66 countries tested about why is it so difficult to become more diverse in organizations. And you know what came out? That of 66 countries tested, the Dutch show the biggest discrepancy between their self-image and their bias. So the wonderful and nice self-image hinders us to really discuss it. This test was specifically on women advancing in organizations, but would it be very different on bias and skin color? We've tested a little bit from now on, and we see the exact same effect. Beautiful self-image. I don't do this. I don't need to be taught about diversity and inclusion. We know how it works. We know. Just yesterday, I was giving a seminar, and people said, Esther, we don't need to talk about selections because we know exactly how to pick the best person.
Oof.
Ooh. And here we go. And so this is what it is. And Holland is the country that thinks that we don't need this, that we're not racist, that we're not biased, that we don't discriminate. And we need to see that we do this. We are no better than the rest of the world. But the wonderful self-image hinders us to look in the mirror of our own, of how we act each and every day. And that's the painful thing. We talk about the US as if it's worth, and if it's, it's we are horrified by it. But the same thing happens to each and every day here in Holland as well. And that's why people feel empowered, with the big movement to speak up about it. And that's why we need to do things. And bias has an immense impact on how you see, and in daily life has everything to do with how you build your inner groups. This is impact on your career if you experience bias or racism. Can you be in the same inner groups that other people are in organizations? Will they allow you in? Will they help you as much as they help other people in their inner groups? Or are you out of group? Do you need to work harder to get the right information? Do you need to work harder to hear about promotion opportunities? Do people look at you with some distrust, or do people actually help you actively? And so in a group, people help each other. And the bad thing about it is that you cannot trust everyone. And so it has the maximum of 150 people. Your brain can actually capture that. And the average is 62. But what it means is that you often, based on similarity bias, you pick people in your inner group unconsciously that look like you. And so other people that you don't surround yourself with have less chance to hear things from you that would benefit them. And the other thing is that, for example, effects on promotions. This is a computer simulation done with women advancing in the organization, but you could use it for any bias. And you can see here that they do the computer simulation on a little bias. And if you have 8 levels, 10 years of promotions bias, then you end up, if you have 10% bias, which is the least we measure, so 1% bias is non-existent nearly, you end up after 8 years with 12% women in the top and 88% men. And you think you have done it very fairly. Yeah? Bias hinders you to look at the talents in the right way. This is the exact same for color of skin and for age and for physical ability.
So I think what you're saying is that going on the way that we have is clearly untenable, because it will never ever yield significant different results, right?
No. And especially in Holland, where we seem to walk away from the idea that we are part of the problem ourselves. And we have a small test that we do, and I will invite you at the end to also engage in a test. You can do that for free if you do it today or tomorrow, to test yourself. And it's always a big shock to people to find out that they are biased. We tell people, 83% of the people will show bias at the end of the test, and still people think that they belong to the 70% that don't have bias.
Right.
And so that is the shock, and we need to, we really need to work on that together.
So this may be less interesting for our non-Dutch viewers, but and maybe sidetracking your story a little bit, but where does this superiority complex come from?
Yeah. It's a very old story. It is, we talked last summer, we interviewed quite some people on this topic, scholars on this topic, to find out, what is so specific on the Netherlands. But it seems that we have had this wonderful self-image since the 1700th century. We allowed people to be near us, different people. We allowed people to come from different cultures and stay in the Netherlands. But as long as they weren't interfering in our lives, we allowed them to be here. And as long as we could live in our own bubble, it was fine. And that is, that is hurting us now a lot. So it's from the scholars that I spoke to, they said it's been going on for years. In the 50s, we had also this, from religion, this differences thing. So we have seen a lot of patterns over the last centuries that actually emphasize that.
Great. So, so please tell us a little bit about what can we do?
Yeah, and so I will talk about that, but I wanted to find out, tell you a little bit more about how much it hurts, just to show you, to make sure how important this is. And so, psychological safety is the basis of high performance. Do I feel safe to contribute? And do I feel, can I speak up without feeling embarrassed or insecure? And will that have no repercussions on my image or my career? And, and you could ask yourself, how safe is it to speak up in your organization? The fact that people feel empowered now to speak up, but not a few months ago and a few years from now, it shows that it hasn't been so safe to speak up in lots of organizations. And you should ask yourself that. And remember that exclusion or inclusion, especially exclusion, is always picked up by the brain and will never be forgotten. Yeah. So instances where people forgot about you or shut you off or whatever is things that you will never forget. Your brain will treat that kind of information with priority. And so often you need to ask yourself, if you don't have a lot of colored people or, in your management team or people from a different cultural background, if you have no women in your top of your organization, is that because they are not capable or is that because of bias? And I will tell you today, it's probably because of bias and not because of capabilities. That makes no sense. Yeah. And so what can we do? What can we do? Start today to learn more. Maybe you started already. I hope you started already. Start to, and remember, there's no expert on this topic. There's so much more new information coming out and new studies that will help us to understand better that, there are only good and lazy students. And I hope that you're joining today shows that you want to be a good student. So keep doing that and get the lazy student involved. And know that denial is at the heartbeat of racism. The denial of the fact that this happens is the most painful part, and that's the same for discrimination and making very biased decisions. And so, you should ask yourself, and with your management team, and with your team, and everyone in the organization, where do we stand? Where are we? Are we still in denial? Do we see it's not correct in our organization, but we stay passive and we talk and we agree it's not good, but we don't actually take action? Or are you already a little bit more aware and that you're finding and you're willing to learn more about it and to do some self-examination and to show a little bit of your vulnerability? I don't know, but I know it doesn't work. Or are you on the active side already, ready to encounter and to find out more and to speak up when you think it's important? Or are you an advocate? A person that's willing to look to the system lens of the organization and see what's wrong, what doesn't work, and what should we improve. And that is, that's the first question I think you should ask yourself. And then how can I move up to the next stage? How can my team, how can my organization move up to the next stage? Because that's what we need. And be honest, because it's so easy to say that you're an advocate, but the proof is in the actions. The proof is in your habits. The proof is in what you do on a daily basis. So don't make it too easy on yourself.
So Esther, we're getting some questions in, and everybody out there, please keep sending them through. So Maaike asks, how do you ensure that in becoming an advocate, you don't make it become about you, right? Because you're probably part of the majority. Yeah. So how do you make sure that the focus stays on the right topics, on the right people?
Yeah. I think by asking that and asking for feedback very often on this topic, am I doing the right thing? Are we in this together? Are we in agreement? But you don't scare away to talk about the right topics, and also involve yourself in what other groups might be left out, and also become the advocate of those groups. So I think that is the best way to keep asking yourself, I'm doing this to move on and help the organization. That's the high performance thought behind it. I'm helping the organization to improve by doing this. So it's never, I don't think in that way, it's ever about you and yourself.
Right. And I think that's a super powerful argument above and beyond the moral obligation that I think we clearly see to actually move towards the business case. Yeah. Another question that we are getting is, okay, what can I read to become aware? Yeah. Do you have any suggestions on that as well?
I think there are, if you want me to, I can send you some great articles if you would like that. I wrote a little booklet myself. At the end, you can order that. It's very cheap. I think it's €10 or so. But you can read more about it, how to actually do this. It will get in more detail about what I just talked about. I will show you a test that you can do to learn about yourself if you are biased on color of skin. And that's for free, and I offer that to you now. And talk. What you need to do is you should not talk about others, but you should learn from others. So go and meet with the people that you think must have experienced racism or must have experienced discrimination, and talk to them and ask them and listen. So go out and meet these people. I met somebody from the UK a few years ago, and they said, what I see in this debate in the Netherlands, we talk about the other groups, but we don't talk with the other groups. And so, engage yourself with the other groups, whatever that group is.
Right. Well, and I think that's true for a lot of other countries, possibly as well.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Please don't let me keep you.
Last 2 slides I have, and last 3 slides actually, is what do you do? Yeah. What I see companies do now is jump to actions, make promises that are not related to what they should aim for. And I believe you should go for building a framework where you build equality by design. You will always stay biased, unfortunately. Your bias is a way to survive life, So we will not get rid of our biases, but we can de-bias our processes. And so that's what we call equality by design measures. You look at where in our systems does whoever the person, do we all get a fair chance? So if you, for example, find that, you don't get resumes in from people with a different cultural background, you should ask yourself, why not? What is the image of our organization? Maybe we are not writing very open job vacancies and postings. And so what you will find is you need to ask yourself, where are we? Is it because, are we losing diverse talents at a faster rate? Is our onboarding process not up to par? Is the way that we include them not up to par? And so you ask yourself what? And you need to remember that, I put a car in here because I call that beep factors. In 1959, cars got seatbelts, but nobody was wearing them until the late 90s. Until, you got beeps in cars that remembered your unconscious brain, buckle up. And that makes now, you think nowadays that you buckle up because it's safer, but in reality, your brain is annoyed by the noise. And so I want organizations to be annoyed by the noises that we know on equality by design measures. And equality by design, like the seatbelt methods, are transparent and fair. Everybody knows about this. Yeah? It's predictable. You know when it will hit you. When you know when it will actually go off, and there will be allowed for no exceptions. It's everyone the same. And you need to think about, where in our organization will these measures have impact and are feasible, doable. And so you can look at, are we inclusive enough as a culture? Do we really know what it is to be underrepresented in this organization? And do we know how to help? Don't we have our recruitment, processes in place to really hire diversity as well and give everyone a fair chance? Is it in the onboarding process that we forget to aim for, staying you as you are? Is it appraisals? Appraisals are very often in a group, helps in a group, and often therefore they are unfair. Promotions. Are we all giving fair chances? Do we inform everybody in the same way? Are we helping everybody in the same way? Are in decision-making process, is everyone involved? Or just the people in your inner group, for example, or the people you know best? Engagement. Now you're measuring that, is every group in the organization as engaged, or are some groups more engaged? Not so long ago, it was an organization with a high average engagement score. But then when we looked into further details, some groups were far less engaged than others. And that turned out to be the underrepresented groups that said, it's wonderful for those, but not for me. And the last thing, how are your daily routines? Do you have, are you as manager available to all people or more to some? Are you? Do we stop people that that make jokes, that have humor, that hurt other people? Do we stop them right away? What do we do when people start bullying or interrupting people a lot? Do we have rules for that, like beeps? that hinder us. And I like to work with organizations that look for where in the system do we need to put beeps in, so we hinder bias to actually make decisions for us. And that's the best way to work in the Netherlands, because of a wonderful self-image. We should not trust that this happens with us wanting it to change.
Great. Let's make sure that ultimately that great positive self-image is actually based on reality.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to this this beautiful example that you gave about the seatbelt dings, right? Because they are annoying. If I understand you correctly, that not only applies to the systems and the rules and the processes that you put in place, but also to the people, the actual advocates, right?
Yeah.
They too should be annoying in order to make sure that the organization steps up its game, right?
Yeah, and as you said, they should be transparent and fair. They should be predictable. So an advocate will say, I will look after if this goes right, and you will hear from me if that's not the case. Yeah, right. I don't think, I hope that, organizations organize this so that it doesn't need an advocate to do this all the time, because an advocate can go on to the next in the system, like the next thing that we need to change in the organization. And so, so advocates, you don't want advocates to, in the end, become the beeps. Yeah, I want the beeps in the system.
Right.
Yeah. But of course, advocates can point out where we need the beeps.
Right. So, if you are part of a minority in any intersectional form or shape, what is your power to stand up to something that's much bigger than you, much more ingrained and systemic as we've seen it now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, as you saw in this movement, the power is often with the group. Yeah, so that the group starts, you collect other people and start to debate something. You know it's right, but you often need more people, you need more examples, you need data, you need, the gathering of data. It's unfair. So I look at a lot of data in organizations. So are promotions fair? So I'm not saying, I'm just saying this is not the right thing to go about it. This is, you're doing something wrong. And then I help organizations to see how should we correct things. So I would say, collect the group, gather more people around you, also people that are not from the unrepresented group, people that are also advocates for change, and look at the data and make the data speak for itself.
Right. So, and in line with that group versus individual structure, I think over the last couple of weeks, we've seen CEOs resign. We've seen them being praised depending on their behavior, of course. David asks us, should equality by design be a top-down or a bottom-up kind of thing?
I think the discussion should always be bottom-up. What do we need? But it should, of course, it should be put up, it should be put on people top-down. This is how we will work. This is how it will go. And I've seen a lot of gender equality by design measures that came from bottom-up. And then there was always people that wanted to challenge it because they didn't believe it, or they belonged to the privileged group that didn't have, that weren't bothered by it. And they challenged, the beep. And then there should be somebody higher in the hierarchy saying, stop this process. This is not what we agreed. Do it over, or you will not be involved anymore. Right. So I often see that it needs to be enforced by the top.
Okay, right. But not necessarily thought out.
No.
Right.
I think everybody should be included in that. Yeah.
Great. Another question from Serge. Inclusion is a hot topic. We see that organizations are putting out statements. They may even be making donations. Obviously, they're all against it. They aim to be better and inclusive. But he says, okay, some people are not asking to be included, but they're looking to create something new and better together, which I think is super interesting, because especially after this COVID-19 crisis, which if you're a longtime viewer know is actually the reason why we started these webinars, there have been a lot of calls to kind of rebuild our economies in different ways, in fairer ways when it comes to equity between people, but also, of course, more sustainable. So to those people that don't want to integrate into existing broken systems, but actually want to build something better, are we even right to focus on inclusion? Are we even right to kind of break, try to fix something that's broken and that hasn't served people of color very well for over the last 400 years?
I find it's a very interesting question, and I'm not the expert on on knowing all of this. But if I look at this, I think whatever system you will build and whatever better system you will build, and I applaud that, is you will always find out that the brain will be biased, will not be as inclusive as you want it to be. So, your brain in that new system, your brain will show the same incapabilities as it has now. So we need to always be on the watch. Thinking that new systems will hinder this to happen, I don't think that will ever happen. So remember, the brain does this to help us, and therefore, in the new systems, rethink how you want to, whatever the word it is you use, whatever the system you hang it up, you will have to take into account that the brain is incapable of always being inclusive, and therefore we need to organize it.
Right, which is also why you focus on the system beams and not on the people.
But I love the idea that should you spend your energy on making a broken system, heal a broken system, or should we just build new systems? And if you build new systems, take into account that you still have the same brain.
Right.
That does the same thing.
Yeah.
But maybe it's easier that you can spend your energy on building something good than prepare something that is broken.
Right. What odds do you give this movement of actually being able to stick around? And I'm not just talking about Black Lives Matter, but this general anti-racist movement that's now also, of course, talking in a much broader debate across politics, society, and of course, companies.
Yeah. I get this question very often. Yeah, will it fade away? Do you think how long will it last? Will it be over by the summer? The odd thing is, if we don't want it to move, if we don't want it to go away, it won't go away. It's the same as people that talk about culture in organization. They say, I would love to change it, but I don't know how to. It's about your habits. It's about what you do every day. If we don't want it to go away, it's every individual that counts. It's every employee that counts. So, keep at it if you don't want it to go away. It's a movement started by people. It's a movement that we need to keep alive with people. It's a movement that we should not let go of in organizations to repair things or to make them better or to start new movements. So the odd thing is that people ask them, but they themselves are the answer to this.
Right.
We should not let it go. We should keep it alive. And I see very brave people doing that currently. Right. And that is how we make it to something that we won't let go. And let's be the winners of that in the Netherlands and anywhere else.
Right. And what do you think the role of the government is in this? Whether it's the Dutch one or any other?
Yeah. Well, the government can help a lot by also looking at equality by design measures and seeing if they can help things as well. First of all, the government can help to be far more inclusive and diverse themselves. Yeah? Because it's interesting, why would you put on measures to other organizations if you're yourself not diverse at all? I think cultural diversity is nearly the lowest within the government. So therefore, do it yourself. Show us, be the role model of what we want. And then again, also look at equality by design measures. Where can we install, how much do we discriminate in selection processes or in recruitment processes? Can we make rules to make sure that no one does this? But I think the government can be extremely helpful. And then again, the government should first work on themselves as well.
Right. Yeah, especially because if we fall back on your seatbelt example, it was not car companies that started doing that out of themselves, I believe.
No.
So
No.
great.
Yeah.
We have a couple more questions coming in.
Please.
And I think especially Serge's question on trying to fix a broken system or rebuilding something new.
Serge, show us the way. Yeah,
yes.
we will lead us. Yeah, lead us.
So, but it also has inspired a couple of other questions.
Yeah.
An anonymous follow-up question. So this person says, okay, capitalism has winners and losers, right? Which is true because we have billionaires and we have people on welfare or in extreme poverty. So the entire system has this power imbalance.
Yeah.
So if we actually arrive at a future where we give minorities of whatever type the same type of opportunities, do you think those roles will be reversed so that you and I, for example, being white, will end up in minority groups?
So the idea is that I think this is how I want to answer this question, and it's probably not complete, but in high performance organizations that we study, capitalism and profit maximization is never the goal of high performance organizations. It has everything to do with happy customers, happy employees, and building something that is sustainable and improving that. So I believe that if capitalism is the highest goal, someone winning over the other, that is, some group winning over the other, that is never the road to a sustainable an environment. So if you remember that, and then again, it seems to be the competition that we have created are quite masculine systems, that in the masculinity, the system is I win over you, I'm better than you. Yeah, and that is something that we need to rethink. But we will probably rethink that when we become more inclusive and we become more diverse.
Right. Great. Thank you.
That debate will, that will actually find more solutions.
Right. Yeah. So in the wake of this protest movement, I've also been reaching out to people of color in my circle of friends, and I was struck by how emotional those stories become and how they all of a sudden start remembering things that happened to them years ago, but that for some reason were still etched into their soul, which is of course a super tragic thing. And that kind of relates to one of the questions that we've gotten in. So we see, and I think this is true also for clients that we try and help, where we have to make the case for diversity and inclusion still, that if the moral argument doesn't work, you need to rely on something more rational, right? So the business case for diversity and inclusion, the high performance aspect of it, which is of course a very real and rational reason that people may relate to. But at the same time, these people they have the same emotional basis for their decisions. So we try and counter something that's as emotional as my friends who have had to endure all these terrible experiences. But we're trying to counter that with rational arguments. How can we move this discussion more to an emotional argument, so that we tell organizations not just the ratio behind working towards a more diverse and inclusive organization, but also the emotional arguments?
Yeah. As I said before, I think, that exclusion and not being included is ingrained in the brain. You will never forget. And that is where the pain comes from. It's like microaggressions, the one thing adds up to the other, to the other. And at a certain moment, you're full of little things that happen that are not worth mentioning at that moment, but are worth mentioning if you look at it as a whole. And the only thing you can do at that time is be a good listener, understand, and help and ask these people, what should I do to improve? Not what should the organization do, because the organization is just the people, but what can I do to help? And then people will say, speak up for me more, or at meetings, let me talk as well, or invite me to talk, or tell me if there's a promotion chance for me. And so what can I do? But be the listener, because often they have never been listened to, or I've never been listened to. And it's very difficult for the privileged group, to understand what goes on, what happens. I not so long ago I did this test with a group of people, that was was an underrepresented group and a privileged group, and they had to talk about what did the color of your skin have an effect on your life. And the white people that were more privileged in that sense, they sat there, they had 20 minutes to write things down, and they could write nothing down. Yeah, they said it's I don't understand the exercise, I don't know what it's all about. And then when they were grouped together, the black people told all these things that had happened in their lives, and then they realized, wow, skin color has an immense effect on who you are and how you treat it. And just be the good listener and learn. And that is going from the unaware, the denial states, to the aware states, to the active states. That's when you become a good listener and you dare to ask the good questions. And even if those questions sometimes feel not as the right questions, that you at least try. And then when you become the advocate, you have learned to speak up about this. But begin by showing the interest and listen.
Great. Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you not just for your story, but being in the same room with you the passion, which I'm sure translates very well into everyone watching from home or at the office. So yeah, of course.
Yeah. I have one more thing. One slide. If you would like to test yourself, on skin color and bias, if you start that test, if you email me, I think that's the easiest, or if you link me, you will find it as well on LinkedIn. You can do the test if you start it today or tomorrow. It's for free. And we will actually publish a report on that with the 1,000 people that we have so far in. And you can also get that report again to learn more about it. We are doing a search on, on what the balance of leadership is all about, the managerial side and the leadership side. If you want to participate in that, you would also get the report, but it would really help us. So send me that as well. And of course, I wrote this little booklet. It's small, but it helps you to understand this story even better and look at the data behind it. So if you want to, you can find it on bol.com. But just so that I can help you to the next stage, or do something yourself is the best way to get active. Yeah.
Thanks, Esther. Yeah. And I think that's the call to action.
Yeah.
We, as companies, as organizations, we have to do better. And I think if there's one thing that Esther has taught us, it's not going to be easy. Be a good student, be alert. But remember, if you don't start focusing on this, you're gonna lose energy from the people that you hire that can't be themselves in your organization, and you're gonna lose innovation power. You're gonna lose creativity, which are all things that any organization, regardless of industry, can really use in this difficult time. Thankfully, you're not alone in this process. If you want any information, help, find Esther, find a factory. Obviously, we're here to help you in any way forward. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you really take this as a call to arms, so to speak, and do better, because that's what we really need to be doing. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. Our guest in 2 weeks is still a mystery. We're working on some really great speakers, but rest assured, we're going to make sure that you, again, have the privilege of watching and listening to people as knowledgeable and passionate as Esther today. Also, please visit our YouTube channel, because you can look back and find all the other webinars in this series. And I hope to see you again in just 2 short weeks. Until then, please stay safe and stay diverse, please. Thank you.